of these. I got a little obsessed with mine. In fact, I got a little obsessed with all my stuff. Have you ever wondered where all the stuff we buy comes from and where it goes when we throw it out? I couldn't stop wondering about that, so I looked it up. And what the textbook said is that stuff moves through a system from extraction to production to distribution to consumption to disposal. All together, it's called the materials economy. Well, I looked into it a little bit more. In fact, I spent 10 years traveling the world, tracking where our stuff comes from and where it goes. And you know what I found out? That is not the whole story. There is a lot missing from this explanation. For one thing, this system looks like it's fine. No problem. But the truth is, it's a system in crisis. And the reason it's a system in crisis is it's a linear system and we live on a finite planet. And you cannot run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely.
Okay, the use of the word finite is extremely misleading. When people think of the word finite, they think of a petri dish where bacteria have a limited amount of space to grow. She's saying that we have a limited amount of space for our waste and a limited amount of space for human beings. This is also demonstrated with the exponential growth function, which argues that humans are increasing at an exponential rate and our waste and production are increasing at an exponential rate, and we are going to run out of resources. The problem is that that argument does not factor in efficiency and prices. One way to think of efficiency is to think of a calculator. It used to fill an entire room to do the amount of work that a handheld calculator can do today. The same is true with microchips, which are continuously getting smaller while holding more and more information. With garbage and waste, we are actually using less and less space because we compact garbage better than we ever did in the past. And the fact of the matter is, the Earth is compacted with tons and tons of resources that we don't even know how to use yet. In fact, the deepest mine is no deeper than 15 miles, and it's 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. Prices has to deal with the fact that as prices naturally increase, as resources become more and more scarce, well, then people will ration those resources naturally without centralized planning. That is ignored from her entire argument.
Every step along the way, this system is interacting with the real world. In real life, it's not happening on a blank white page. It's interacting with societies, cultures, economies, the environment. And all along the way, it's bumping up against limits. Limits we don't see here because the diagram is incomplete. So let's go back through. Let's fill in some of the blanks and see what's missing. Well, one of the most important things that's missing is people. Yes, people. People live and work all along this system. And some people in this system matter a little more than others. Some have a little more say. Who are they? Well, let's start with the government. Now, my friends tell me I should use a tank to symbolize the government, and that's true in many countries and increasingly in our own. After all, more than 50% of our federal tax money is now going to the military.
More than 50% of our tax dollars goes to the military, according to whom? Oh, that's right, it's the War Registers League, an anti-war group who consciously takes out Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security from when it's factoring in the budget because it claims it's part of a trust account, which it isn't a trust account. The fact of the matter is that our tax dollars go to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and in that case, defense is only 20% of our budget. The way they do it, that's not even factored in.
But I'm using a person to symbolize the government because I hold true to the vision and values the government should be of the people, by the people, for the people. It's the government's job to watch out for us, to take care of us. That's their job.
I was curious where on earth she got the idea that it was the government's job to take care of us. Well, it turns out that it was a misreading of the Constitution. I looked at the footnotes that accompany this video, and it turns out that footnote 5 is where she got this idea from the preamble of the United States Constitution, where it says that we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. Well, she interpreted the promote the general welfare to mean that the government's job is to take care of us. Well, James Madison, the father of the Constitution, described exactly what the general welfare means, and it certainly does not mean that the government's job is to take care of us. So this is a misinterpretation of the Constitution that's being taught in classrooms throughout America. I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution which granted a right to Congress of expending on objects of benevolence the money of their constituents. James Madison, the father of the Constitution. With respect to the words general welfare, I have always regarded them as qualified by the detail of powers connected with them, meaning the enumerated powers. To take them in a literal and unlimited sense would be a metamorphosis of the Constitution into a character which there is a host of proofs was not contemplated by its creators. James Madison, father of the Constitution.
Then along came the corporation. Now, the reason the corporation looks bigger than the government is that the corporation is bigger than the government. Of the 100 largest economies on Earth now, 51 are corporations.
I double-checked to see where she got that fact from, and it turns out it's from Top 200, The Rise of Corporate Global Power by Sarah Anderson and John Kavanagh, Institute for Policy Studies, December 4th, 2000. And if you go down to the bottom, it says it explains where they got that information from. It said of the largest 100 economies in the world, 51 are corporations, only 49 are countries, and this is based on a comparison of corporate sales and country GDPs. Well, country GDPs will include corporate sales for some corporations, but so what? The fact of the matter is, if this is based on sales, that means that corporations are providing the goods and services that people need to survive, and it's a meaningless statistic.
And as the corporation has grown in size and power, we've seen a little change in the government where they're a little more concerned in making sure everything's working out for those guys than for us.
Yeah, only corporations influence our government, not any of the unions. We have no unions in America. The unions have no power. Not in the Chrysler bankruptcy, not with our teachers' unions. The unions are powerless and do not elect any politicians. And I forgot about the environmental lobbyists and the environmental organizations that are having everybody buy wind plants and solar plants and all this other nonsense. Then we can add to the list the trial lawyers, because the trial lawyers don't elect anyone either.
Okay, so let's see what else is missing from this picture. We'll start with extraction, which is a fancy word for natural resource exploitation, which is a fancy word for trashing the planet. What this looks like is we chop down the trees, we blow up mountains to get the metals inside, we use up all the water, and we wipe out the animals.
Yes, we do cut down trees and replant them to make life possible for most of the people on this planet. The same is true for mining, which has been going on since the Roman Empire. Waters have been cleaner than they've ever been in the last couple decades. And yes, people who eat meat do it to increase their standard of living and also to make life possible for people on this planet.
So here we are running up against our first limit. We are running out of resources. We are using too much stuff.
Okay, I said this before and I'll say it again. Anybody who says that we are running out of resources does not understand the price system. As resources become more and more scarce, the supply of those resources decreases and then the price of those resources increases. That makes people naturally not buy those resources and look to alternative resources that are cheaper. That is what's going to happen as we start running out of resources, and nothing needs to be done about it.
Now, I know this can be hard to hear, but it's the truth, so we've got to deal with it. In the past 3 decades alone, 1/3 of the planet's natural resource space has been consumed.
Okay, that is patently false. We're not close to using 1/3 of our natural resources. Moreover, nothing is a resource until we know how to use it. Land that used to have oil on it used to be worthless because we didn't know that gasoline could be used as a resource. It's 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. We haven't scratched the surface.
Gone. We are cutting and mining and hauling and trashing the place so fast that we're undermining the planet's very ability for people to live here.
If that were true, life expectancy projections would be decreasing rather than increasing.
Where I live, in the United States, we have less than 4% of our original forests left.
Okay, that quote that she just gave is a blatant falsehood and should disqualify this video from being shown in classrooms throughout America because it's patently not true. She doesn't even know how to read her own data. She got this from footnote number 11 where it says, quote, 95 to 98% of forests in the continental United States have been logged at least once since settlement by Europeans. That doesn't mean they're gone forever. It means they can be logged multiple times when the trees are planted again. That would be the equivalent of saying every time we harvest corn, that farmland is gone forever. Here, I got this data from the United States Forestry Service, and look, since 1920 to 2000, the number of forests in America have actually increased. See, since 1900, forest area in the United States has remained statistically within 745 million acres, plus or minus 5%, with the lowest point in 1920 of 735 million acres. U.S. forest area in 2000 was about 749 million acres. Last time I checked, 749 million acres is not 4% of 1,000 million acres, or 1 billion acres.
40% of the waterways have become undrinkable.
Again, she misleads the audience. She says have become undrinkable. Well, she gets it from this quote where it says, today 40% of our nation's rivers are unfishable, unswimmable, or undrinkable. It doesn't say have become. You go to any river 200 years ago and drink out of it, you're going to get sick. You had to boil it. The fact of the matter is that waters have become cleaner than ever, and our technology has made it so more people can drink water than ever before.
And our problem is not just that we're using too much stuff, but we're using more than our share. We have 5% of the world's population, but we're using 30% of the world's resources and creating 30% of the world's waste.
This is another worthless statistic. The United States uses resources more efficiently than any place on the planet. We use resources more productively than any place on the planet, and we happen to feed half the population. We should be using these resources because the rest of the world would be dead if we didn't.
If everybody consumed at US rates, we would need 3 to 5 planets. And you know what? We've only got one.
Again, this has to do with the exponential growth function, which ignores prices and ignores efficiency. As resources become more scarce and prices increase, people self-ration those resources, and the government doesn't have to do anything about it.
So my country's response to this limitation is simply to go take somebody else's. This is the third world, which some would say is another word for our stuff that somehow got on somebody else's land. So what does that look like? The same thing, trashing the place.
This is such a tired leftist dogma. It's called trade. We give them capital and our new technology, and they provide labor and resources, and both parties are better off than they were before.
75% of global fisheries now are fished at or beyond capacity. 80% of the planet's original forests are gone.
What is an original forest? Are we starting at Pangea?
In the Amazon alone, we're losing 2,000 trees a minute. That is 7 football fields a minute.
It shouldn't be surprising when there's no property rights in the Amazon that people don't replant the trees. Stop having the governments control the resources.
And what about the people who live here? Well, according to these guys, they don't own these resources, even if they've been living there for generations. They don't own the means of production, and they're not buying a lot of stuff. And in this system, if you don't own or buy a lot of stuff, you don't have value.
Again, this is ridiculous. Those people's lives are significantly improved by trading resources and labor for capital and technology.